It started, as many stories do, with a body. Early one morning in the quiet suburb of Fairfax, Virginia, joggers stumbled upon the lifeless form of a woman in a park, her body positioned almost ceremoniously, with a delicate white lily placed gently in her hands. There were no signs of struggle, no defensive wounds. Just peace and death. The authorities were baffled. It was the kind of crime scene that didn't scream horror, it whispered it. That's when the name first began echoing through back rooms at FBI headquarters, the Lily Killer. No one knew then that it would take over a decade, 11 more bodies, and an intricate dance with the nation's best profilers to come even close to naming him. The victim was identified as Margaret Linton, a 32-year-old schoolteacher beloved in her community. She had no enemies, no criminal history, and no apparent reason to be the target of such precision. But the way her body was left, posed, preserved, hinted at something deeper, more calculated. The FBI brought in their behavioral analysis unit. At first, they assumed this was a one-off. But when a second victim was found 6 months later in rural North Carolina, again with a lily, again posed, just as carefully, they knew they had something much bigger on their hands. What baffled investigators wasn't just the pattern, but how meticulously clean each crime scene was. No fingerprints. No hair. No fibers. No DNA. Every trace seemed wiped with surgical precision. The only link, a single white lily, and a victim who had seemingly no ties to any of the others. By year 3, there were 4 victims in 4 different states. The media hadn't caught on. The FBI didn't want them to. A multi-jurisdictional serial case could trigger panic and compromise the investigation. Behind the scenes, Agent Marcus DeWitt was the lead profiler. He was in his late 40s, smart, steady, the kind of man who lived off black coffee and hunches. "This guy's not a monster in the dark," he told his team during one late-night strategy meeting. "He's walking among us. Buttoned up, calculated, maybe even brilliant." And DeWitt was right. The man behind the crimes, his real name was Daniel Whitaker, was a software engineer by day and a chameleon by nature. He donated to charity, attended church, volunteered with a local youth coding program. No one suspected the quiet guy who always returned his library books on time and smiled at neighbors. Whitaker's victims had no idea they were being watched. He'd observed them for weeks, sometimes months, learning their routines, their habits, their weaknesses. He chose women in nurturing professions, teachers, nurses, counselors. People who healed. Because, as it turned out, he believed he was healing them. In his own twisted logic, he thought he was rescuing these women from a world filled with disappointment, loneliness, and pain. In handwritten notes later recovered, he called himself the Quiet Mercy. His killings followed a ritual. He'd lure them with a fabricated emergency, a fake car breakdown, a lost child, a request for help. Once they were isolated, he used a mixture of sedatives and careful strangulation. No bruising. No violence. Just silence. He kept trophies, but not in the traditional sense. Each kill was documented in a leather-bound journal, with meticulous notes, pressed lilies, and audio recordings of soft ambient music playing during the final moments. It wasn't until the 8th murder that the case broke. A street camera in Austin, Texas caught a fleeting glimpse of a silver Hyundai pulling away from a trailhead near the victim's last known location. The plate was blurry, the image grainy, but it was a lead. DeWitt's team traced the make and model to thousands of registered vehicles. Then they narrowed it by state. Then by city. Eventually, they had a list of 147 names. And one stood out. Daniel Whitaker. He had lived in all 5 states where the murders occurred. His job allowed him to work remotely. He had no spouse. No kids. No priors. But his resume showed gaps, strange ones, that aligned almost perfectly with the murder timelines. It was enough for surveillance. For weeks, agents watched him. He did nothing suspicious. He jogged. He shopped. He coded. Then he slipped. Just once. An agent posing as a delivery worker noticed a locked trunk in Whitaker's garage. Something about it felt off. When the agents returned with a warrant days later, they found what they never expected: meticulously organized journals detailing each kill, pressed flowers cataloged by date, and chilling audio recordings. Each entry began with the same phrase: "Another soul freed." The trial was swift. The evidence, overwhelming. But Whitaker was calm throughout, offering only this statement before sentencing. "You see killers. I see releases. In a world drowning in noise, I offered silence." He was sentenced to 12 consecutive life terms without parole. But the case didn't end there. The FBI admitted that Whitaker had fooled their system for years, changing states, identities, and patterns just enough to avoid detection. His ability to manipulate digital footprints and stay beneath federal radars exposed weaknesses in cross-jurisdictional databases and forensic protocols. The case sparked new legislation, increased funding for cold case units, and greater emphasis on behavioral analysis in law enforcement training. As for Agent DeWitt, he retired 2 years later, quietly. When asked during an interview what stayed with him most from the case, he replied, "The smile. Not his. The victims. Every one of them was someone who made the world lighter. He knew that. That's why he picked them." Daniel Whitaker, now known as America's smartest serial killer, wasn't a genius because of how he killed. He was a genius because of how long he convinced the world he didn't. And for 12 years, he walked among us, offering flowers instead of fear. This is Whispers of Crime, where the darkness is real, and the silence always tells a story. But the story doesn't end with the trial. In the aftermath of Whitaker's arrest, the FBI faced internal scrutiny. Several high-ranking officials had ignored early patterns. Interagency cooperation was minimal. A Senate subcommittee convened to evaluate how a single man evaded multiple state task forces. Meanwhile, journalists and documentarians rushed to tell the story. The public devoured every detail. Victims' families, once cloaked in grief and obscurity, became advocates for change. Melissa Granger, whose sister Rebecca was the 9th victim, started a foundation to advocate for cross-state information sharing. "He killed because no one was talking to each other," she said in a televised interview. That silence gave him cover. In prison, Whitaker agreed to be interviewed by one profiler. Not Agent DeWitt, he declined, but a younger analyst named Dr. Lila Harmon. Over the course of 6 months, Harmon recorded over 40 hours of conversation. He was meticulous, she reported. But not just in murder. He knew every loophole in FBI data protocol. He exploited systems. But more than that, he believed in what he was doing. He saw himself as righteous. Whitaker described his kills not with glee, but with reverence. "I released them from loneliness," he said during one chilling exchange. "They were tired, you know? They never said it. But I could see it." His twisted empathy made him more terrifying. He didn't hate his victims. He believed he was saving them. DeWitt, watching from afar, remained haunted. He kept clippings of each woman's obituary in a drawer at home. On the anniversary of each death, he lit a candle. But the world had moved on. True crime podcasts retold the story. Netflix greenlit a dramatized series. And in the noise, Daniel Whitaker became part myth, part monster, part warning. Yet for those who knew the truth, the mothers, the sisters, the agents, he was simply a man who saw the world too clearly, and chose silence over salvation. This is the story of how he fooled the FBI for 12 years. And how, even now, he lives on, not in freedom, but in memory. This is Whispers of Crime, where every detail matters. And every voice must be heard.